I had this moment a few years back. I was on a third date with someone who looked perfect on paper. Smart, funny, thoughtful. We were at a bar and a game came on the screen behind me. He turned to me mid-sentence, eyes completely lit up, and spent the next 40 minutes narrating plays to a table of strangers he'd never met. Full emotional investment, groaning, fist pumping, the whole thing. And I just sat there, not annoyed exactly, more like watching something through glass, like I was seeing something real about how he was wired, and realizing quietly that we were wired very differently. I didn't think much of it at the time, filed it away as a preference thing, a lifestyle thing. You like sports? I don't. Whatever. But the more I studied psychology, the more I realized that calling it just a preference is one of the biggest myths in relationship compatibility, and it quietly destroys more connections than almost anything people actually talk about. Here's the myth almost everyone believes. If someone doesn't care about sports, it's just a hobby difference, like preferring tea over coffee, benign, irrelevant, not worth analysing. That's wrong. And I want to show you exactly why. Not to make anyone feel judged, but because once you understand what's actually happening underneath that difference, you see the other person completely differently. You stop having the wrong argument about it. So let me start with what sports actually are. Psychologically speaking, our brains still run ancient code, and sports are modern tribes. That's not a metaphor. That's literally what's happening neurologically when someone puts on their team's jersey and walks into a stadium. During a match, a fan's brain doesn't treat it like a game at all. It releases a chemical cocktail almost identical to what our ancestors experienced before going to war. Think about that for a second. The person next to you on the couch, sweating through a playoff game, their nervous system is treating this like life and death. When their team wins, testosterone spikes. Feelings of dominance, excitement. When their team loses, cortisol floods the body. Fight or flight, just like our ancestors defending their territory. This isn't weakness. This isn't being too into a game. This is ancient machinery running exactly as designed. So here's the question most people completely skip over. What does it mean about someone when that machinery barely fires? Here's the thing nobody talks about. People who don't obsess over sports often have what psychologists call lower tribal instincts. Their identity isn't as strongly tied to group membership. They're more individualistic. And the myth, the dangerous one, is that this makes them cold, emotionally unavailable, maybe a little arrogant, like they think they're above something other people enjoy. I want to challenge that completely, because I've watched it cause real damage in real relationships. The truth is, people who don't like sports usually aren't missing athletic appreciation. They're missing the identity fusion that makes fandom feel rewarding in the first place. Identity fusion. That's what researchers call it when a fan's personal sense of self and their team's identity become so intertwined they're basically the same thing. The line between self and team just disappears. For someone wired that way, sports feel like home, like purpose, like belonging. For someone who isn't. Without that tribal attachment, 90 minutes of two teams chasing a ball looks, quite reasonably, like 90 minutes of two teams chasing a ball. Neither person is broken. They're just operating from completely different psychological blueprints, and this is where relationships start quietly fracturing. Not in dramatic fights, but in tiny moments of mutual incomprehension. Now here's where the real myth lives, the one that costs people the most. The myth is that non-sports people don't feel things as deeply, that they're less passionate, less communal, less capable of that tribal loyalty and emotional investment that sports fans wear so openly. You've thought this, either about yourself or about someone else. Either something must be wrong with me for not caring, or they must be shallow for caring this much. Both conclusions miss the actual psychology. It's about empathy allocation. Everyone has a limited capacity for caring deeply. Non-sports people often direct that empathy somewhere else entirely. Social causes, personal relationships, creative work, intellectual challenges. The capacity for deep investment isn't smaller, it's just redirected. A 2021 study found that people with low sports interest scored higher in openness to experience and appreciation for art and beauty. Their brains are seeking the same reward, meaning, connection, transcendence, just through a different channel. Same brain, same need for meaning, different channel. And this matters so much in relationships because two people can be equally deep, equally passionate, equally hungry for connection, and still never quite feel seen by each other, because they're running their intensity through entirely different systems. Here's the compatibility piece. Nobody explains clearly enough. Fandom works as social shorthand, a way to bond quickly with strangers over shared loyalty. Walk into any bar, mention the local team, and you're in, instantly. No effort required. Someone outside that system isn't just missing interest in the game, they're missing access to an entire social language. Think about what that actually feels like in a relationship. Your partner lights up every time sports comes on. You don't. So you either fake enthusiasm, sit quietly on the side, or start finding other things to do. None of those options feel good, and over time they compound. Research has shown real conflicts, frustration, feelings of neglect, when a partner's fandom consistently takes up space. Partners of avid sports fans report fandom frequently overshadowing the relationship itself. But here's what I think gets missed in that research. The sports fan isn't doing anything wrong, and neither is the non-sports partner. What's happening is a values mismatch that neither person has a clear language for, so it comes out sideways as resentment, as you care more about that game than about me, as you never try to be interested in what I love. Both people are right, both people are also missing something. The thing that genuinely surprised me when I dug into this, the actual turning point, is what non-sports investment reveals about someone's attachment style. Researchers call it parasocial investment versus direct engagement. Sports fans build one-sided relationships with teams and players. Non-sports people prefer investing emotional energy where there's actual reciprocity, where their care matters to the outcome, where they're participants, not spectators. Read that again. They prefer investing emotional energy where there's actual reciprocity. That is not emotional unavailability. That is, in a lot of ways, the definition of relational depth. The person who doesn't care about sports may be the exact person who shows up fully in a relationship, because that's where their emotional investment actually goes. They aren't pouring it into a team. They're saving it for something real. A 2022 study found that people with less interest in sports are less likely to fall into us versus them, thinking across all areas of their lives, which means they bring less tribalism into their relationships. Less of that my team versus your team energy that quietly poisons how two people fight, compete, and keep score with each other. That is not a small thing. A person who doesn't need a crowd to feel whole, who forms deep small connections instead of wide shallow ones, who invests emotionally in places where it's reciprocated. In a relationship, that person is actually extraordinary. But if you're measuring them by a sports fan's metrics, you'll miss it entirely. Now let me give you the other side, because I promised both. If you love sports, deeply, genuinely, tribally, and your partner doesn't, here's what's probably happening inside them that you're not seeing. They're not being snobby. They're not judging you. They are watching you access a whole social world that runs on a frequency they simply don't receive. And the loneliness in that is real. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because belonging is a human need and your partner is watching you belong to something they can't enter. Navigating this comes down to communication, mutual understanding, compromise. I know that sounds like a greeting card, but it's genuinely what the research points to. The thing is, the conversation has to change first. It can't be, "Why don't you like sports?" That question has no useful answer. The question that actually moves something is, "What do you care about the way I care about this?" Find that thing, enter their version of the stadium, even once. That's the reframe. The myth that sports disinterest is a personality flaw, a red flag, a sign of emotional shallowness. That myth has made people dismiss partners who are actually capable of the deepest kind of connection. Because the connection those people offer doesn't look like shared jerseys and Sunday rituals. It looks like full, undivided, reciprocal presence. People who don't obsess over sports often report feeling more present in their own lives. They're not spending 3 hours every Sunday living inside someone else's struggle. They're engaged in their own. And when that presence gets turned toward you, when someone who lives fully in their own experience chooses to live in yours for a while, that's not a consolation prize for missing the game. That's the whole game. Stop measuring connection by which channel it runs through. Start measuring it by how deep it goes, how honest it is, how present the other person is when the stadium is empty and it's just the two of you. That's the only scoreboard that matters when the final whistle blows.